Okay, we're all set. I'm speaking with Barbara Slate, who is known as a feminist cartoonist. She's been praised by the New York Times as emphatically of our time. Uh, Thank you, Barbara, for doing this interview with me. I wanted to start by asking you, it,
Okay. You're cutting out a bit.
that may happen.
Okay.
Maybe we'll get used to it. Hopefully we won't run into any problems. Let's begin by telling me what
Okay.
led you to do the graphic novel adaptation of the Mueller report. Tell me the story behind that.
Oh, well, okay. Well, like so many people, I was waiting for the Mueller report to make everything right in the world. And when it came out, I um, I saw the enormous how difficult it was to read, and it frightened me actually. I was upset that you really couldn't read it, and I knew that it needed to be a graphic novel. But there was no way I was going to do it. I was thinking, which one of my brilliant friends are going to do the graphic novel? And I don't know what came over me. I think I kind of got obsessed with it. But I was on Twitter and I looked at Jennifer Taub's post, and she's a lawyer, very smart woman. And for some reason, I just typed in, I'm thinking of doing the Mueller report as a graphic novel. And she said, I can't wait till you do this. Like that, came back. And I thought, well, thinking about it is not the same as doing it. But I downloaded it and I started reading it again and again and again. And I just became obsessed with it. And it was either doing it or going back into therapy. It was one of the two. And I started, so what I would do is post a page a day on Twitter. And I got such great responses. So within, I guess, a day or two, I went from, because I wasn't a Twitter person. I was mostly Facebook talking to my friends. But within a day or two, I went from 35 followers to something like 2,500.
Oh my.
And oh my. And every day, these Twitter followers became like my cheerleaders. And in high school, I don't mean to brag, but I was a cheerleader. So it made me want to continue. And then I started breaking it down into panels and telling stories. And, it was a real act of passion, I guess. Every day I woke up, I would spend almost 12 hours a day on it. And, trying to make it easy to read and something that everybody could read. And I had that voice in my head, that critical voice in my head saying, if you can read it, anybody can. So that kept me going too.
Oh, that makes total sense because you do such a wonderful job of synthesizing all of this because you are a master.
Thank you.
You're a master visual storyteller. So your job is to make sense out of the complex. And I interviewed Steve Dean and Shannon Wheeler.
Yes.
They have their own graphic novel of the Mueller report, and they support your book. They're so happy to share the stage with you. And they were pointing out that there's so many different ways to present the Mueller report.
There were several people who were doing it, yeah.
And you pick different things out or highlight different things than they do. One thing that was interesting is it seems kind of minor, but it actually is pretty big, is early on you talked about the IRA and how they infiltrated Facebook. And there's this quote, let me see. Oh yeah, one example, I noticed early on that, the IRA, a Russian intelligence front, a Facebook representative testified that Facebook had identified 140 IRA-controlled Facebook accounts that made 80,000 posts and reached 126 million people.
Yeah, astounding. Isn't that, that's astounding, isn't it?
Yeah, imagine what's going on right now. Something is going on right now as we speak.
I know. It's very, it's really, it's so difficult. It's, when is this going to end? That's, I wake up every day saying, when is this going to end? Especially this morning.
I want to just show folks, give them a taste of your Mueller report. The drawings are just so wonderful that they just bring everything down to the essentials. Pardon my, I've got all these Post-it notes.
Yeah, no, I really wanted to make the drawings. I didn't have time to spend a whole lot of time on the drawings because I needed to get that page out a day, and I wanted them to be easy and simple. And sometimes if I get tight, I would switch hands. You know, it's drawing with my right hand, I can get a little tight, but if I switch off and draw in my left hand, then it continues to get loose, and then I can switch back to my right. So I wanted to keep it loose and keep it moving, and not critique myself too much with it, because I really needed to get the writing down and then make the story. It's the second part of the Mueller report was easier because it had much more dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cover-up is always the more, all the machinations. It reads more like a novel, like with
Yeah.
Watergate.
Yeah.
The cover-up sometimes usually is worse than the actual crime, huh?
Right. The good news is that the cast of characters were right out of central casting. They were, I would, you know, I'd read about the character and then I'd look them up I'd look them up on my computer, and there they pop up. I'd say, yes, that's a great look. Especially the Russians were wonderful. And then, you know, there were certain ones that had, like McGann had that little thing right there in between his eyebrow that just, as soon as I put that in, there he was. So, and of course, Trump was fairly easy.
Yeah, I'm speaking a little more loudly because there's a leaf blower out just outside my window, and so it's making me very self-conscious. It probably isn't even being picked up, but it's bothering me a lot. Let me
It's
let's
fall.
let's talk a little bit about the debate. So this interviews will be documented as having taken place right after the first presidential debate between Trump and Biden. And well, there's the two takeaways that I see. The one being that Trump said, "Boys, stand back, stand by."
Mm-hmm.
And then even worse, or just right up there, is how he did not say anything about how he would be happy to calmly resolve whatever the election is. No, he's actually asking his supporters to be poll watchers. So he's basically asking his supporters to intimidate minorities that are going to be voting. So those two are colossal. Getting back to the stand back, stand by, the dog whistle, the coded language, where he gets to say basically his lies, the crime, and he's saying it in public view.
He does. He says it right out loud.
That ties right in with what's going on in the Mueller report. Specifically, my pet one is the Magnitsky report, the Magnitsky Act.
Yes.
Dovetailing with the Russian adoptions. So whenever Russian adoptions are mentioned, and it's not in the Mueller report, but he also did that when he met with Putin at one of the G20 meetings. They asked him, "What did you talk about with Putin?" "Oh, it was Russian adoptions." So he's cackling to himself. And Dean and Wheeler were discussing that how it's a long tradition. Mobsters did that. They just speak in code. And what do you have to say?
I just finished the Michael Cohen book.
Oh, okay.
Boy, oh boy, you know, I had like 20 pages to get through, and there was so much going on in the news. And I thought, I can't finish it. I can't bear it. But a friend of mine was coming over to pick it up because I told her she could borrow it. And so I made myself finish it. But, you know, I was very torn between reading it and thinking, well, this guy is telling the truth now. And it's actually a real page turner. I think he wrote it. I mean, I think he wrote most of it. I don't know if he had somebody writing it with him, but he's actually a really good writer. So, but, you know, he does talk about the code and he knew what to do. And, you know, he didn't have to, Trump doesn't have to say anything to him. He just, you know, it would be nice if, or I wouldn't mind if that person were, you know, and that was the code. But it's, you know, it's all very sad. And, you know, it's been going on I haven't cried in 4 years. And I think when this thing is finally at an end, I think I'm going to have a cry I'm just going to sit down and sob, because I think so many people, well, for me, I'm holding it, and I always feel there's like an underlying depression, and I've been holding it in for 4 years. But, you know, the thing about what struck me last night, aside from what you were talking about and the hideous way he didn't let Biden talk, and, you know, aside from all that, was at the very end, the model Melania got up. I mean, she's a beautiful girl. She got up and she posed beside him, and he was trying to hold her hand. And it looked to me like she would rather hold poison ivy than hold his hand.
Yeah.
And I don't really have sympathy for him, but if I did, that would really make, that was really sad. And then Joe Biden went over to Joe and just hugged him, you know, just embraced him. And you could just see him letting out this energy from this hug. And I thought, who is hugging Trump? Does anybody hug him? Because we all need hugs. And I just thought that was so sad, you know. Anyway, that was something that it really struck me.
Well, I want to take a moment so people can have a picture in their mind. This is your book, the Mueller Report graphic novel.
That's my book.
And then I also have You Can Do a graphic novel. And somehow I want to connect everything. I want to dive into your career a little bit. And there's so many goodies here. I wanted to maybe begin with asking you, because it seems like you did a little of this, a little of that, and then you came into your own as a comic book writer. Could you maybe share with us a little bit about being a comic book writer? What does it take to write a comic book script?
Well, I started with DC Comics, doing Angel Love, and but I was able to get to Angel Love because I did this greeting card line called Ms. Liz. It was a feminist greeting card line in the 70s. And so I had a meeting with Jeanette Kahn, and she was looking to do a girls line because at that time it was 95% boys and 5% girls reading comics. And Jeanette wanted to do something with girls. So she asked me to create something for them. So I created Angel Love. And that was my first time I actually did a script. I was very lucky because Dick Giordano and Paul Levitz taught me how to plot. I had no idea how to plot. If you can see it in the back of me, this is my new script that I'm plotting. It's you plot by color code. And that was the greatest lesson in my life. So once I learned how to plot, I teach how to plot, and You Can Do a graphic novel because it's so important. And I teach how to do them in schools, and even in 3rd, 4th, 5th grades. I teach this. If they can just get an idea of how to plot, then you can really tell a story. So from there, I went to Marvel Comics, where I met Tom DeFalco, who I pursued for a year, you know, because Angela was taken off the stands. It was drug, sex, and rock and roll. And anyway, it was I wasn't getting hired anywhere. So I was very, I just loved comics, and I didn't want to give it up. So I kept calling Tom and saying, you know, anything for girls, you gonna do anything? And he'd say, yeah, and I started pitching. I pitched so much to him. Actually, I created something with Trina Robbins, and we, you know, and I had so many ideas, and I didn't want to bug him, but so I would put on my calendar once every other month to bug him. And that went on for a while. And then finally I said, look, I get it. You're very sweet, but no, you're not gonna do anything. He goes, no, I'm thinking of doing something for women 21 and over. So that's how I did Yuppies from Hell. And the way I did Yuppies is I would take a pencil and paper every day. I was living in New York, and it was the greatest job in the world. I would eavesdrop everywhere. I would eavesdrop in bathrooms. I did eavesdrop in coffee shops, on lines, on movie lines. And I would just write quick notes, and then I'd come back and start writing a story. So I'd hear little goodies like one time I heard a guy crying, a grown man crying because his 3-year-old didn't get into the right school. And I thought, oh my God, thank you. You know, I felt sorry for the 3-year-old, but it's like, I can't believe this is fantastic. And so I started writing about Hale Preschool, where women who were pregnant were in line to get their child into the school, and they started testing the kids in vitro. You know, and then anyway. So that was one, and then another line I heard was, I think my relationship with what's her name is really getting serious. This is a guy talking. I heard that in a coffee shop. This guy doesn't know her name, and he's worried about commitment. So, and then of course, to make the story, the woman he's dating has to only want to get married. So those were, you know, ties, and that was so much fun. And anyway, and then then Tom started doing a girls line. We did Barbie and Beauty and the Beast and Pocahontas, and then I was the writer.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't do the artwork.
I want to make sure to ask you about Betty and Veronica, because you did so many, you did 150 Betty and Veronica stories. What is the secret behind Betty and Veronica? What did you learn about Betty and Veronica? What did you
first of all, I read Betty and Veronica when I was at camp. So I was 12 years old or 11 years old, something. And I was at Camp Pioneer, and I would read those stories under the covers, you know, with a flashlight. So I knew them. I knew them so well. And they're best friends. And they both love Archie. They've been best friends for 80 years. And they love the same guy. I thought that was miraculous. And I love the idea that they were best friends, and they were so opposite. So most of my stories were not fighting over Archie. Most of my stories were about their friendship. Now, I was always very aware of the girl who was reading this. And I was aware of that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old girl. And I wanted a message about friendship, and not so much about fighting over a boy, although of course they did, but so, and they were polar opposites. And in order to write about them, I had to, and one of my friends was totally Veronica. So I always have a go-to person, somebody who is like that character. So she was my go-to Veronica. And she thought she was Betty, which was so Veronica, you know? she only thought, she could not believe that, but she was definitely Veronica. And I'm much more Betty. So I could be my go-to person. But I had a problem with Archie, because I couldn't figure out what it was about him that these two girls loved so much. And then one night, my boyfriend was bringing over cocktails for me. And I just looked at him, and the way he was moving, you know, Archie was, it was kind of trying to be suave and just being very open. And I got him. There was just like a moment in time where all of a sudden I got who Archie was. So I was able to write Archie. So I actually wrote some Archie stories where he was the main character. It wasn't just Betty and Veronica. And then I started loving Archie. So, you know, it took a little bit of time to get to know Archie, but it was, I love doing those stories. I love those girls. And they're really, it was set in the 50s, you know, and it was very pure, and they all, every family had a mother and a father. There was no divorces. And so they were all only children. Betty supposedly had an older sister, but I never wrote her. So it was really a time when life was simple.
Yeah.
You know, and I love doing those.
Well, I also want to make sure to ask you about the world of comics and how it converges with the art world. And you certainly have experience with that. You had among your art shows, you had one where you took art pieces based on your Violet comic strip. And that's part of the Barbara Slate archive book that I was looking through. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience as a cartoonist in the art world, putting your artwork on the walls? Is it that jarring a difference from putting it on the page, or what can you tell us about that? Comics on the gallery wall.
You know, my boyfriend, who I've been with for 32 years, I wish that there was another name for boyfriend if you've been together for 32 years, but he's my boyfriend. He's an artist. He's a book artist. He started the Center for Book Arts in New York City, and he is he's an artist. So he was having a show at the Elaine Benson Gallery. It was a group show, and I went there it was in the Hamptons, and I went there to help him hang his work. And I met Elaine Benson, and I told her what I did, and she said, "Oh," she said, "Why don't you show me your work?" And I did, and she said she'd love to have my work as part of the show. I was thrilled. And I think Violet was I think I showed Violet. The way I created Violet was I was listening to the O.J. Simpson case day and night. I was obsessed with that case, so I was listening to it all the time. And so I created this character who was a beautiful model. And because of her beauty, when she tried to kill her boyfriend, the cops were on her side because she was so beautiful. So it was kind of like that glamour of being a celebrity, the way O.J. Simpson was. So, but I made it into a woman, you know. So those were the panels that I used at that show, I think. I'm not sure if that was it. But anyway, so, you know, I loved getting reviewed. You know, that was fun. But, you know, I also get reviews in comics. So I'm trying to think if there was a whole lot of difference in my feeling. It was just doing something else. And I liked it. I actually sold at that gallery, and I thought, boy, this is great. And then I did many, many shows after that, and I didn't sell. So it really doesn't, you know, you can never tell why or how or why something goes and why something else doesn't. But anyway.
Well, another big question for me, and maybe this ties everything together, is the fact that you really can call yourself a graphic novelist. You're not just a cartoonist or illustrator that does graphic novels. You've done a lot of graphic novel work. And well, you have your autobio, which is, maybe you're still working on it right now. Persist.
That's what's back here.
Persist, okay.
That's what's happening there. And yes, that's happening.
And but before the Mueller report, you had getting married and other mistakes.
Yes.
And then there's just like a long list of, this is not a complete list, but all of these different things that you've have been doing over the years. Soho Zoe, woman who kill men. Um,
Soho Zoe I did with Stan Goldberg, the great Stan Goldberg.
um, oh, I'm just curious about the chateau murals. What could you tell us about that? That looked very
Oh
intriguing.
yeah, that was crazy. Um, y- that was because of Richard. Richard has an eclectic group of friends, and this guy was a prince. And so he invited us to the chateau, and he wanted these beautiful girls on his ceiling. And he saw my Barbie books, and I write Barbie. And he said, "Oh, you must draw these women like Barbie." And I said, I don't draw Barbie. I write." He says, "No, you must draw." I said, "Okay, I'll draw them like Barbie." So that's what we did. We went to the chateau, and for I think it was 4 weeks, we painted these beautiful. I painted these girls, and then we put them on canvas and put them on the ceiling, and it was a crazy experience. I had just adopted my daughter Samantha, and we took her and the French, I don't know what you call them, the French women who took care of him. They were all over the place. Would come and take Samantha in the morning, and I had this beautiful room to decorate. It was fantastic, but it was mostly because of Richard that I got that job.
Well, well, I think I can answer my own question. I'm wondering what pearls of wisdom you would give an aspiring person going into your line of work. And I think probably the answer is
What
do
pearls of wisdom
it.
you just cut out?
I'm thinking of asking you, what advice would you give somebody just starting out in the business? And I think part of the answer is do a little of everything, huh? Try a little of everything, because you've done quite a bit in different.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just try to if it's sweeping floors, whatever it is, try to break into the business. And I would, I'm in touch with a lot of students. I taught at Montclair State, and I teach at libraries, and I do online classes now. Actually, I'm starting a new online class tomorrow, and it's half adults. Usually it's teens, but now adults. It's just, I don't know if it's the pandemic or what, but it seems like everybody wants to do something to um, to write something about their life, or just what it's like to be in this pandemic. There's a whole lot of things that are happening now because people are going inward, I think. So I would say just get the book. You can do a graphic novel for starters, and because it takes you step by step on how to do a graphic novel. So, and I've reduced it down when I teach is to doing a 6-pager. So if you start with doing a graphic novel, chances are you'll never finish. If you do a 6-page story, the way I did the Betty and Veronica stories,
Yeah.
beginning, middle, end, and twist, and just tell your story in 3 to 5 sentences. Know what your story is, and then you do it in just 6 pages. It's amazing that 6 pages, it seems easy, but you have something like probably 40 panels to fill. So it is a lot. And if you can get those 6 pages, that includes everything. It includes character development, that includes layouts. If you're doing a double-page spread, this is the first panel, and this is the last panel, and then how you fill it in. It includes all those things that you have to do in a graphic novel. So I would say start with the 6-page story and then put it online. Get it out there, get feedback, show it to people. And I tell my students, all my students, I say, when you do something, send it to me. And so some of them do, and I keep in touch with them, but a lot of them are a little shy. They don't believe that I really want to say, I want to see what people are doing. So get it online. There are so many places that you can put your story on. If you're an artist and you need a writer, you can go on one of those places. The kids all know them. I don't really know what they are. I don't know the names, but I've seen them, and you can find a writer, you can find an artist to work with. And when I teach, these kids come in, and there's something about being a cartoonist. You're kind of other. So, the mothers come in with their kid, and I can see that, the kid's shy and all that. And within the second week, they are exchanging numbers. They found each other. They find each other. So that is the most rewarding thing to me, is to see them have these friendships. There are 4 girls in my last class that were just fantastic. They found each other, and they're best friends now.
Oh,
That's great.
well, I'll close by just showing
Thank you.
the graphic novel. And then the Mueller report, here's the thing. Trump will one day be like Joe McCarthy is today. He'll go away. This book you shouldn't feel like it's tainted by Trump. This is a great example of visual storytelling and taking a complex subject, bringing it down to its essentials. So this would be a great teaching tool. It is a great teaching tool. So check that out too.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and